All right, today we are jumping into a truly incredible moment in history. This is a story about a conflict that put the world's most powerful empire, with all its modern rifles, head to head with a really sophisticated indigenous military from southeastern Africa. This is the story of the Zulu War. So let's just get right to the heart of it, because this is the question that makes this whole story so fascinating. How on earth could an army, armed with spears and shields, hand a crushing defeat to the most powerful empire on the planet? At the Battle of Isandlwana, the Zulu army did exactly that. It absolutely stunned the world and just shattered that myth of European invincibility. So, yeah, how did they do it? To get what's going on here, you've got to picture the late 19th century. The British Empire, it's this global machine, right? And it's aggressively expanding its control all over southern Africa. But standing right in its path was this formidable obstacle, the powerful and fiercely independent Zulu Kingdom. You just knew these two worlds were on a collision course. And let's be clear, this wasn't some minor border dispute. This was a true clash of titans. You had the relentless gear of the British Empire on one side, trying to bring the whole region under its thumb. And on the other, the proud Zulu nation, absolutely determined to defend its home and its way of life. A collision wasn't just likely, it was pretty much inevitable. And this is exactly where the British made their first, and you could say, fatal mistake. They completely, totally underestimated their opponent. They looked at the Zulus and saw a simple tribal militia. But what they were actually up against was a professional, highly disciplined, and truly revolutionary military force, the Zulu war machine, forged by the legendary King Shaka. So the whole backbone of this army was something called the Amabuto. Now, these were not just guys called up for a single fight. No, these were permanent professional regiments. For a Zulu man, being part of an Amabuto was a central part of life, and it created this incredible discipline and a fierce loyalty to the king. You could almost say their entire society was organized around this military structure. Okay, now look at this thing. This is the eclaw, and it was an absolute game changer. King Shaka got rid of the traditional long throwing spear and replaced it with this, a short, broad-bladed stabbing spear. The whole idea was both brilliant and brutal. You're not fighting from a distance anymore. You have to charge, get right up in the enemy's face, and finish it in close quarters combat. And all of this came together in their signature strategy, the horns of the bull. It's this really sophisticated and frankly terrifying pincer movement. So you've got a central force, the chest, that smashes into the enemy head-on, holding them in place. But while that's happening, two flanking columns, the horns, are racing around the sides to completely encircle their target. Once they've got you trapped, it's pretty much over. So on one hand, you have this incredibly sophisticated Zulu army. Now let's flip over and look at the British. Their whole approach was just clouded by this deadly mix of imperial arrogance and a complete failure to understand who they were about to fight. And this right here, this comparison is the key to everything that happened next. The British basically saw what they expected to see: disorganized, primitive warriors. But the reality on the ground was a huge, disciplined army with brilliant tactics. That gap between perception and reality, it wasn't just a small mistake. It was a blunder that was about to have catastrophic consequences. The British needed an excuse for war, right? A pretext. So they cooked one up by giving the Zulu king an ultimatum that they knew he could never, ever accept. It demanded he completely disband his army and basically give up his kingdom's independence. It was a declaration of war in all but name. And so, in January of 1879, British forces marched into Zululand, completely confident they were heading for a quick and easy victory. Instead, they walked straight into one of the greatest disasters in the entire history of the British Empire. The main Zulu army, which they called the Impi, was a force of about 20,000 warriors. And listen, this was not just a mob. This was a disciplined army on the move. They could travel with incredible speed and stealth, using the hills and valleys to hide their approach as they silently closed in on the British camp. And right here, the British commander, Lord Chelmsford, made the single biggest mistake of the whole campaign. He was so sure the main Zulu force was miles away that he split his own army, taking a huge chunk of it out on patrol. This left his main camp at a place called Isandlwana totally exposed. The Zulus saw their chance and they took it. They launched a massive surprise attack, unleashing their horns of the bull tactic, and completely swallowed the camp. The result was just staggering. Over 1,300 British and colonial troops were killed. It wasn't just a defeat. It was a near-total annihilation of the soldiers left defending the camp. For an empire built on military power, this was a humiliation on a scale they had almost never seen before. You know, the news from Isandlwana sent shockwaves around the entire planet. This quote really nails it. The battle completely challenged this idea that European armies were just invincible. The thought that warriors with spears and shields could wipe out a modern British force was, to them, unthinkable. It was a deep humiliation and a very brutal wake-up call for the empire. Well, an empire like Britain doesn't take a defeat like Isandlwana sitting down. Humiliated, furious, they basically abandoned any idea of a small, limited war. They were about to throw their full, overwhelming might against the Zulu Kingdom. And this table here really shows you how they changed their game plan. The second invasion was a totally different story. They poured in reinforcements, they ditched their overconfident, reckless tactics, and used cautious defensive squares. And they brought overwhelming firepower, including new weapons like Gatling guns. The British had learned their lesson, and this time they were coming for revenge. The final blow fell at the Battle of Ulundi. The Zulu army, already depleted, charged the British square and was just shattered by disciplined volleys of rifle and machine gun fire. After this victory, the British didn't just defeat the Zulus. They dismantled their entire kingdom. They put a divide and rule policy in place to make sure the Zulu nation could never again rise up and challenge their power. So, the war officially ends with a British victory. But the story, of course, doesn't end there. The impact of this conflict and the lessons it taught the world are still echoing through history today. When you boil it all down, the Zulu War is so much more than just some historical event. It is a timeless, brutal lesson on the danger of underestimating your opponent. It's a textbook example of asymmetric warfare, a powerful symbol of resistance, and a stark reminder that technology alone doesn't win a war. It can be countered by brilliant tactics, incredible discipline, and the simple, powerful will to fight for your home. And that really leaves us with one final thought. In the end, the Zulus lost the war, but their stunning victory at Isandlwana proved that courage, strategy, and discipline could challenge a global empire. And it really forces us to ask, in any conflict, when technology goes up against tactics and sheer will, who really wins?